Hello, I am Shane Brinkman Davis Delamore, and this is Code and Optimism, a show where we explore how to solve problems faster with software. Well, we are entering into the holiday season in the last couple of weeks of the year. I've been working all week trying to figure out what I wanted to do on this episode, and I think I've got something good for you for next week, but I did want to get something out this week. And so I've been having a little bit of a conversation lately with Mike, actually after our interview podcast last week, of sort of daily practices for self-growth and for improving our ability to be effective in the world. And I thought I would just share with you what I'm doing right now. So we also have the episode just recently about the path of mastery for software engineering, where I do talk a bit about some of these things in the abstract. But I think that I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it's like to get these things working in the real world. And it's been a long struggle for me for, let's call it 3 decades going on now. So let's just talk about a few of the things. So I think that the ultimate goal, perhaps, there's really 2 things I think, broadly speaking, I want to keep getting better at myself. And one of them is being able to, when I sit down to the keyboard, being able to get to the destination, whatever we're building, as quickly as possible. And that we've already been talking a lot about this year on Code and Optimism, many aspects of that, and there's much more to talk about. But there's another aspect which I've still been putting off a little bit, which is actually building the right thing. And I still think that's perhaps the most important thing, in that, and I'll say it here, I sort of provocatively like to tell people that 90% of software should never have been written, in the sense that the cost of making that software was greater than the value that came out of it at the other end. And that's because in making of that software, there was not a sufficient effort to make research into whether or not that software is actually going to be helpful to people. So much software gets built on the hope and the dreams and the vision of someone that was not really grounded in reality. And so once it finally gets launched, even if it does help some people, it doesn't help people enough to balance out the fact that it might have cost a lot of money to build it in the first place. Now, 90% is just a number I pulled out of a hat. I do think it's greater than 50%, but where it is between 50 and 100%, I would happily hear evidence anywhere on that spectrum. And maybe I'm wrong, I'll hit evidence all the way down to 0, but I know myself, at least 50% of the software I have written should never have been written because it was not sufficiently validated. And sometimes you just got to try it, and then maybe you get the validation sometime further down the road and you learn about it. So sometimes the value is just in the learning, which we don't quantify very well. But that said, there's those 2 things. How do we get better at building software day to day? And how do we get better at knowing that we're building the right software? And what I want to do is, I'm not going to talk about those 2 things concretely. I want to talk about the process by how we help ourselves get better at things. And just my own personal experience, really, around this. So let's just work with at the keyboard and being productive aspect. So there's really a couple things. For me, the idea, what I feel like I'm getting the most work done is when I'm in flow. That classic state where just the world melts away, nothing else is in your mind other than what you're working on, and it's just pouring out of you like magic. 1, that just is a great feeling, and 2, legit, I'm very productive when that's happening. I think people generally are. So getting into flow, staying in flow is a big deal. Then there is also just the aspect of, we inhabit these physical bodies. And for me, my challenge has always been, genetics wise, I don't have a great back or great neck. My spine is not super resilient. And so I have had to learn a lot of ways of keeping this flexible, keeping it so that I'm not ending up the day with headaches and backaches and strain from sitting. Sitting is the new smoking, as they say, which there's certainly some truth to that. Well, my answer has ended up being yoga. I long ago tried out yoga at a gym I was going to, and ended up enjoying it And the more I've gotten into it, the more I've enjoyed. But the real thing is that yoga has the effect of keeping my body loose enough and relaxed enough that even still it's a struggle for me. It has still been the most effective thing over many, many years of keeping it so that I can sit in front of a computer and program and not be in pain. It's also cool with yoga that after years and years of working on it, I slowly make progress. And it feels cool to make progress in terms of my body getting more limber and more ability to do things I never thought my body could do, like doing handstands. I can do handstands now. This is crazy. But what I do want to say is recently how my experience around yoga has changed. And before the pandemic, I would go to yoga in person, which is sort of like an hour-long session or maybe sometimes a 90-minute session. But the problem is I had to go in person, and it was very hard to do that consistently. If I was really doing it well, I would go 2 or 3 times a week. So I'd do 2 or 3 hours of yoga a week. But quite often my average over months would be 1 a week or less, just because of the reality of life. And so I both got a lot out of it, but progress was slow. And I think it's because of lack of consistency. And so what has happened when the pandemic happens, like I can't go in person. So I tried doing some YouTube. I even subscribed to some yoga specific apps and so forth. At the end of the day, although I still got some learnings out of that, it was even harder. I mean, going to yoga, 1, you're there, you've made the effort, you showed up. 2, you're in a space that's comfortable and relaxing. 3, you've got people to be social with. 4, you've got a instructor which will often notice exactly what you're doing personally if your group size is like 10 or less, and sometimes give you specific help as well as everybody else. That whole experience is much more engrossing than trying to do yoga at home watching a YouTube video. So that didn't work very well for me. But what I ended up doing is, it just felt like a stopgap at the time. It's like, all right, fine. I know I need to keep myself limber. I'll just do the stretches that I know that work well. And it would take me about 10 or 15 minutes to do that. And then I just tried to do it regularly. And I eventually got to the point where I did it most days. So I do 10 or 15 minutes most days. So I'll call it on average, we'll say 5 days a week. And so 10 or 15 minutes, call that, an hour. That's 100 to 150 minutes. So like 2 or 3 hours of time, which is, as you may notice, higher average amount of yoga time per week than I was doing previously. And I'm doing a little bit every day. I have seen marked improvements in my flexibility way faster in the past year or two than in the previous 15 years. Small amounts every day consistently. So that's one thing I want to mention. There's lots of physical stuff I'm still not great at. I need more cardio. Sometimes I walk great, but I do need to walk more. I know walking a lot helps me quite a bit. I do have a standing desk here that I move up and down, and that is helpful. So at least I'm not sitting like I am right now all the time, but it's still not the best. And I love to swim, but swim is another one of those things like you got to get to the pool. It takes a lot of time to go there, has time to come back. The pool might be busy. It's been complicated during COVID, all those things. But my learning here that I'm sharing with you is a little bit more consistently. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. So that was that learning. The next learning I want to share is, as I mentioned earlier in the show, my family spent a month in Barcelona this summer in August, and I did a couple shows from Barcelona. And much apologies for me recording in our hotel room there. But it was fun to do. And when we came back, we were adjusting jet lag to the new time zone. And I sort of made a conscious choice that when we were back, I would, instead of going fully back to the same sleep schedule I had before, I would have it shifted an hour earlier. So instead of getting up at 7 every day, I would get up at 6, and I would try legit to get to bed by 10 at night. And because I kind of realized, like, staying up until 11, I wasn't getting a lot out of that last hour of my day. I was just kind of staring at the screen numbly. And versus when I get up in the morning, and this is because I'm a morning person, I guess. It's kind of weird. I didn't think I was a morning person, but as an adult, I kind of am more morning person than most people. I get up an hour before anyone else in the house gets up. And so I had this hour of quiet time to start my day. So what the result of that has been is that I've also been able to get my meditation practice really going. And this has actually happened since before this, but this has really amplified it. So I was already making some progress on doing some consistent meditation. But coming back from Spain and having an extra hour in the morning has allowed me to, one, get that yoga in, two, have the chance to do 10 minutes and optionally more. This is the first time I've started to do 20 or 30-minute meditations because I had that time in my day to just do it. And again, it's that little bit every day. And not necessarily quite every day, but like 5 out of 7 days. And I think that that's really the sweet spot that I'm finding. And for me, the meditation experience. So meditation, sometimes that's a charged topic for people, but I just want to offer it as practicing managing your thoughts. That's all it is. All of us have thoughts, and a lot of our thoughts run wild in our brain and take us in directions we don't want to think about. They get in the way of us being productive. This is just a tool, and the best tool that I am aware of, for practicing managing our thoughts so that we can corral our thoughts in the direction that moves us towards the great things in life we want to move towards. I think meditation, and when we say meditation, there's so many different ways to do meditation. There isn't just the meditation. Meditation is just my definition of it, any practice of managing our thoughts. And so that is why I think it's valuable. And my experience has been, I've learned the meditation pattern of listening to your breathing. That works okay for me. I've tried watching a candle. That doesn't work very well for me. Sometimes I do the listening to everything that's happening around me and trying to identify all the sounds as precisely as I can, just paying attention outside of my head. And I like that also you pay attention to your touch and your senses, right? So it's very much just pay attention to anything but what's going on inside your head. And that can be useful for me too. But the thing that I like the most about meditation is it gives me new thoughts. And this is what I found interesting, and I hadn't heard from other resources teaching me meditation, is that meditation's about like being devoid of thoughts, turning off the thoughts, quieting your mind, all these things. And those are all true. But my experience has been, what that really means is it quiets all of those noisy, annoying thoughts that are not helpful to make space for the interesting thoughts, the new thoughts. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm not always great at this, but usually when I'm doing good meditation, I will meditate until I start to have good and interesting, new, novel thoughts. And this is critical for the second point of software development, which is tying it back, is that new novel thoughts are what's going to lead us towards building the right things. To have that fresh perspective that is looking at your whatever you're trying to solve from a new angle so that you're really understanding, is it going to land well? And this can certainly apply to solving technical problems that are challenges too, but I think the bigger problem is, are we even building stuff that matters? I sit and I like to meditate, and my routine is I like to focus on where my thoughts come from. It's really that come from that is the key thing that I've been working on at my current level. I'm sure that at some point it'll shift, but right now I just watch in my mind for a thought to come up. And I envision myself sitting on like a lake with a little bit of misty fog, and I envision the thoughts kind of coming, I don't have a visual for them, but metaphorically coming out of the lake up into the air around me. And I notice them. I notice where they came from, which is usually connected to a work worry or, a bad interaction I had, or maybe it was a good interaction, or it was a movie I watched. And then I go, oh, I see where that came from. And then I let it go of it. And I imagine melting is the word I use. I melt the thoughts away. And I go back to this sort of serene, like this still lake, and I'm sitting on a boat on it, or some similar image. But the key thing is that aspect of seeing where the thought comes from, and that sort of lets me separate from the thought and let me melt it back away. After the sort of ones that I've already been thinking about obsessively over the past week or so kind of have got their turn, then the space opens up for new and novel thoughts. And they aren't always programming or related to work. I mean, they can be related to like cooking or anything that in my life, they can pop up. It can be relationships and so forth. But I do find almost every day that I do a good meditation, I'll get one or two novel thoughts. And that is on a daily basis. Can you get how else are you going to get 5 to 10 novel thoughts a week other than doing something like that? So to me, that's been a huge breakthrough with, again, I've reserved this extra time in the morning, so I've got the space to do that. And I've got the space to do 10 to 30 minutes. And I just start with 10 and I go longer if either I feel like it, if I feel like I haven't gotten enough out of it yet. And I will say I also feel like, in addition to those novel thoughts, which is a very concrete outcome of this process, I have also started to get a sense that when I do this in the day, the rest of my day becomes less painful. I can get through my long days, which I have a lot of meetings with people on Zoom, and I've got a lot of different things pulling my attention in many different directions. I can get through all of that with less emotional attachment to the things that create stress, and I feel less exhausted at the end of the day. So, those are some of my practices and how they have shifted. Now I'm going to add the third and final one, which is journaling. Now, after I graduated college, I spent about a decade designing this programming language called DREF, which is kind of like a visual C++. I mean, not C++, that's maybe a good combination, but it was a statically typed, object-oriented language that was designed to be massively parallel and easy to use. And cool thing to do. It didn't end up going anywhere. But I journaled obsessively for that process because it was hugely creative. And I only journaled like technical stuff, but I've got like 20 journals from that period of my life where just as I was coming up with ideas and how to solve this problem of massively parallel, easy to use. That was sort of the two things that I was trying to design for. I can say that in hindsight. It wasn't as clear at the beginning. And so I was coming up with a huge amount of novel problem solving. And so I journaled on that. I just brainstormed, and later I wanted to find all these notes because a lot of my thinking was in these journals. And I got really good at creating tables of contents. I would like reserve pages at the beginning of my journal so I can go back later, number the pages, put a table of contents together, note them all together. And then I can cross-reference journals because now they're page numbered and so forth. I got a whole system going. But the lack of searchability, eventually, after that period of my life, I moved on and started using note programs. I used Evernote originally, and now I'm using Bear because searchability is so important. Being able to search is huge. And in fact, the use of Evernote and searchability led me to create Caffeine Script in a very different way than how I created DREF. So Caffeine Script is my programming language that lets you write Java at least 3 times faster. And that language, actually, I use all the time now. It's very effective. It does work really well. DREF never got to I got to the point where I could write programs in it, but it did not ever become a particularly useful tool. Versus Caffeine Script is way faster than JavaScript, and so I use it a lot. But again, that came from note-taking and journaling, but there's something that's been lost doing digital journaling. There's something about taking pencil to paper or pen to paper. There's something about being able to just sketch pictures in easily. And yes, with a pad and a stylus, you can get close to that. But I still like doing it on a physical journal. There's something to that. And something I've never really done in the past is journaling in the way that most people think of journaling, which is a little more personal. And I recently listened to a motivational book, which I found useful. In fact, I'll just put a link to these 2 books. There was a book a motivational audiobook that got me started really on meditation a couple years ago. And there's this one on the 6 methods of growth, which I thought was pretty decent. But it got me thinking about journaling again and realizing that I can still do my technical stuff in Bear, so it's searchable, but I can do just the actual life progress journaling as a way of processing and leveling myself up just a little bit every day. I can get leverage out of the journaling. So here's what I'm doing with journaling. I decided to just land on whatever worked for me. And I think anyone should not take any particular guidance on one way to journal. You just take what's going to work for you and do a little bit every day. Again, this little bit every day is really powerful. So I have a section called Yesterday, where I write down my successes from the day before, celebrating my successes, celebrating what I liked. And the success might be something that I didn't like that happened, but the success is that I learned something from it. Now, if something that I didn't like and I didn't learn something from it, I don't write it down. I'm looking to celebrate the successes here. Then I usually in the middle write my vision. And currently, the vision I'm working with is 3 keywords, which is love, mastery, and impact. And love in this sense means certainly relationships, friends, family, but it also means, it really means deep connection. Love has always meant deep connection to me. And so love also might just mean the love of good conversation, and also deep connection with the world and nature. So love of being out in nature, love of being in a beautiful city, love of feeling connected to things outside of myself. So that's my love vision. And so I'm trying to look to how to do that better. How do I connect more deeply with people, with place, with nature, all those things? That's that topic. Mastery is, kind of this impact, this podcast, this video show on YouTube. It is, how do I continue to get better at my trade? I love the path of mastery. I love this infinite scaling up of skills. I love always taking the next step to bring it to the next level. And the last is impact, which is more, it's impact, right? I want to contribute positively to the world. And I'm kind of at that point in life where I'm still trying to figure out how I want to shift things. I was an entrepreneur for a while. I had some great ideas. I wanted to revolutionize social media. I did not succeed. But where do I want to go from now? And to a certain extent, code and optimism is providing me that impact output. And to a certain extent, my day job as CTO at GenUI also does too. But I'm still trying to figure out how to do more with impact. And what does impact look like to me? Like, what do I want to do out in the world? And maybe I'll talk about that on another podcast, because that's a whole nother set of topics. But my point is, I have these prompts that I'm doing every day to keep it fresh, to start off my day with love, mastery, and impact. These are the things that I want to have more of in my life. I'm reminding myself every day. So I write down those 3 words, and then I just jot down whatever pops in my mind. Usually I write down a little bit on one of them, not on all 3. But whatever pops in my mind, I write down the 3 words. Whatever pops in my mind, I write it down. And then the last section I do is today. And specifically, I've heard do 3 things, say the 3 things you're going to do through this week, say the 3 things you're going to do today. That doesn't work for me. I don't like that. I often miss one of those things, and that just leads to frustration and a sense of failure. Failure is a little too strong, but that frustration. Instead, I highlight the things I'm looking forward to accomplishing today. Again, it's like pre-celebrating my wins, but it's the things I'm looking forward to getting to today that's going to get me through the day. That makes me excited to go about my day. That makes me excited to be alive and get out of bed. And I like that focus because it also says, this is what I want more of. I want more of those things that get me excited to get through the day. And so it lets me highlight those. And even if they don't happen, it's not a goal. It's not like a failure if I didn't achieve them. The success is just that I got excited to go forward. That something to look forward to creates motivation. And in that creation of motivation, I'm getting better at self-motivating. So that sort of sums it up. Those are the 3 things that I am doing now at the moment that are helping me level up my game, both in that sense of mastery for being able to hit, fingers to keyboard and create great software solutions quickly. And I'll call it product design, but that high level, are we building the right thing? How do we know that we're actually doing something that's going to matter to people at the end of the day and be worth building the software for? And those 3 things are yoga and physical stuff a little bit every day, meditation as a way of practicing managing my thoughts so that the obsessive thoughts that derail my ability to be productive can pass through me and I can let go of them easily, and I can focus on the thoughts that get me where I want to go in life. And then journaling as a way of externalizing my thought process out of my head, and as a way of repetition, repeating back to myself my goals so that I can keep moving forward in the right direction and make progress every day. Those 3 things have been really useful for me lately. They're all works in progress. They always will be. That's sort of the nature of these things. And they'll change over time. But I like them a lot, and I'm going to keep doing them here into the new year. And there's things I need to add back into my routine. Like I said, I need more cardio. And there's other things I need to practice. And I do think I need to set a little bit of goals. I think there's a whole nother topic of goal setting and thinking about that, because I've got a view on that that's different, I think, than a lot of people. And so I'd like to come back around to goal setting in another topic. I think that's everything I want to share today on that. I want to wish you all a merry holiday season. I hope that these thoughts might be helpful for you thinking about your new year, about what's the thing you can do a little bit every day that can help you contribute towards moving towards your goals. I would love to have your comments, so please send some comments down below. I would like to hear what other people have discovered that they can do in a daily routine or mostly daily routine that helps them level up their capabilities day to day little bits. I would love to have other ideas. I mean, these things I'm doing now were inspired by just 2 random things I picked up off of Audible, and that was great. And they've really impacted my general well-being. I would love to hear more from other people because that's where the good stuff's going to come from. So please do that. And I have not prompted before, but I will ask, if you like this content and if you think that other people might get a value out of this, clicking like, subscribing, it's the YouTube algorithm. Those things will tell YouTube that more people should see this. So I would very much appreciate that. I hope this is valuable to people. I'm doing it to hopefully be valuable. But it's nice just to do it. It's part of my routine, my weekly routine, to do this sort of thoughtful practice. So hopefully we can collaborate. I would love to hear back from you. Let's have a conversation. Put comments down below. And once again, I will thank you for spending your valuable time with me. And remember, all problems are solvable with enough knowledge.